The RotoBaller PGA show for the RBC Canadian Open. It's me, your friendly neighborhood model maniac, Byron, joined by, as always, one of my best friends on the golf world is Spencer Aguiar, aka T of Sports, right now on the RotoBaller PGA show for the RBC Canadian Open. How are you doing, my buddy?
I'm doing well, Byron. It was a very somber week last week with all the news that came out with Grayson Murray. I don't think we're going to spend a lot of time talking about it on this show. Like, condolences to his family, obviously, for everything that transpired there. I think one of the really interesting takeaways that I just want to say before we move forward and we talk about golf and we discuss this event is, you look at Grayson Murray and what he was actually putting together from a statistical perspective and an output perspective with it. He turned himself in. He had won an event this season. He had turned himself into a top 60 player in the world. I think the interesting note to all of that is no matter how great your career is going and how everything's looking on that front, it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. There's so many things that are outside of the world where we look at golf and it looks like a super impactful thing. And Peter Malnati said this very well when he had his interview with Amanda Balionis. Like, they're all trying to beat each other out there. It's very difficult when things are going wrong in different parts of your life. And I think that goes to show that these athletes, no matter how spectacular they are human at the end of the day. So condolences to Grayson Murray and everything that he was going through there. Just a very tragic situation.
You never know what people are going through. I've seen this not awesome, but very impactful mental health awareness ad where it's a British ad where this guy and his buddy go to the soccer game. And the one guy's like a really mopey, he looks depressed. And it's a long ad because the whole impact of the ad is to show that at the end of this ad, the one guy that's not there is the guy that looked like he had his shit together.
Yeah.
Like the mopey guy is still at the soccer game and his buddy passed away, like because of mental health. And you don't realize that that's the situation, So it's really brought to the forefront how the world is. And you got to love the people that you around yourself and lean onto those people when you find yourself in that position, and I've obviously been a big advocate of all this stuff and it sucks. It really does. But at the end of the day, Spence, his like golf game was trending so nicely as well, which is the crazy thing is you'd imagine that you get your life together and then your golf game follows kind of thing, which made me think like, man, this guy's got his stuff like figured out. Just doesn't, like it's crazy. So love everyone around you. Just like we're going to love the RBC Canadian this week and kind of just, come do our best and just see what we can do. The world's a wonderful and brutal place at the same time, the yin and the yang of life, right? So
yeah.
What we do have for you guys is some fun stuff, and we're going to go through our rankings. We're going to chat about the golf course, which is kind of newish, remodeled. We just keep playing these remodeled, refurbished greens now. It's the swing of the greens that have been replaced. So Spencer, short golf course, past 70, roughly 7,000 yards, a lot of forced layups in a way. Rory McIlroy hit the sixth most fairways out of everybody while driving an average of 300 yards when he won here last year. So if you can do that, it's going to help. The majority of people that played well either hit a lot of fairways and made a lot of putts. That's basically what I understood from the last time they played at this golf course. How have you kind of inferred this venue?
Yeah, I think that Rory McIlroy runaway victory 5 years ago doesn't necessarily tell the complete story of what you're looking for here. Like you talked about it, he was driving at 300 plus yards, also finding a bunch of fairways and put together an astronomical strokes game perspective. Like you don't win a tournament by, 7+ strokes without just really having everything throughout the bag that week. So this is a challenging venue that, in my opinion, is going to only be more challenging with some of these restorations that have taken place. So you essentially have three major things that have happened to this course over the past, let's say 100+ years. Like you have the first iteration of it where English architect Harry Colt builds the property. He gives you 18 of these 27 holes that we get. Robbie Robinson comes in. He adds his flair to the dramatics here in 1974. You get those extra 9 holes. obviously we're going to only use 18 of those locations this week, but now you get this new move where Martin Ebert comes in. You get a restoration, $11.5 million. As you talked about last week, we had a $20 million restoration. So there's been a lot of discussion that's obviously taken place on the PGA Tour to where they're trying to transform these courses closer to the original design, make it more modernized with it, make it a little bit more new school, but do it with the old school approach with the look and the feel of the property. So you're going to get these revamped greens. It's going to be POA and bent split. I do see a lot of rain in the area right now. I don't know what that's exactly going to do for projected scoring at this point. That's something that, you're going to have to run into a model to try to figure out. But it was a challenging course. I don't want people to look at Rory's score in the 20 under par range and think that's what everybody was doing. He was playing a different golf course than everybody else. I don't know what the winning score is going to necessarily on that
Sunday, Spencer.
Yes, and I don't know what the winning score is going to necessarily end up being this go around with it. I'd probably think 14, 15, 16 under. I don't know if you have a different take than that, Byron.
Yes, I was thinking that minus 15 or better is going to be the winning score, in my opinion. The fact that they've only, you've added 100 yards to a golf course that really wasn't that long to start off with anyway. The majority of the length is only on a few holes, really. Like the par threes are like long. 184 and above. Yeah, so it's going to be a lot of wedges and it's wet. And, it's kind of funny because I was taking a look at the 2019 stats and I pulled in the average driving distance for this golf course. I'm like, 283, it's really low. That's a lot of forced layups. The tour average in 2019 was 285. It's like, look at what's happened, right? So I don't think that the additional yardage that they've added to this golf course is going to help protect it from the technology that we've seen. So I think these guys are going to be hitting so many more fairways with 3 woods, with 3 irons, with even drivers where they can. And we're going to see these guys dominate, especially with a wet golf course,
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Byron. I think the wet golf course is the key to this whole thing because we've seen, just look at the past couple months, every single time we've gotten a wet golf course, and these are lengthy golf courses we're talking about of 7,600 plus
Quail
yards.
Hollows, yes.
Yeah, the Quail Hollows of the world that the players still took apart. There's a lot of undulations around these greens. That's kind of the tricky thing. I have seen that some of these green complexes got expanded ever so slightly from what we had. The bunkers got reformed a little bit. Like there's some ebbs and flows of difficulty that we're going to have based off of those answers. But a soft golf course, unfortunately, always will make things easier. Like there's no way that the PGA Tour at this point, unless you just have a really quirky golf course where it's almost like there's just water. I guess water would kind of be the one outlier there just because water is the great equalizer to where one bad shot, and like we talked about it with Jake Knapp a handful of weeks ago, you find the water a couple times and all of a sudden you post a 10 plus on a hole. So you have a couple situations like that come into play, but for the most part, I'm not viewing this venue all that dissimilarly to what we got 5 years ago. You kind of said it best. A lot of that extra distance that has been added to the mix, you're going to find at a very few locations where it got added to the mix to it. So the par fours all extremely short. Everything is about 450 or less. And then the par threes are where it's the difficulty. Like 3 of your more challenging holes there, a handful of them are going to be over 200 yards. That's going to be where you have to salvage your score. But tough green complexes. I added quite a little bit of putting to the mix this week, more than I normally would.
Well, that's the thing, Spence, is I just pulled 2019, ran a few things. The strokes gained approach for the top 10, the average strokes gained approach was higher than the strokes gained approach for the top 5, which I know it's only 5 guys. It was 6 guys. It was T4, for 5th and 6th, basically. But it was confusing to me. Like, this doesn't make sense. But at the same time, it's like, okay, maybe this is the course's DNA. It's going to provide the ability for everyone who's good and bad with the irons to kind of survive. And you just got to make sure you hit the fairways and putt. So that's kind of my takeaway from it this week. So it's been this weird week, Spence. If I had the Bob Ross wig out, kind of painting pictures for the stats and things that we're going to expect, because we've been projecting so much the last few weeks on courses that we've played because of these remodels. So it's going to be interesting to see how the course unfolds. But we've got some guys in the chat here with Joanne saying hello to us as we dive into the Model Combat ranking portion of the show. Spencer, we're going to kind of break down our top 10 golfers for the week. Also, we're going to bring in the golfers that Joe Idoni has broken down for his top 10 rankings that is over there at rotoballer.com, a free article for you so you can get Joe Idoni's top 10 rankings for the week. We're going to break them down for you. Yeah, you can go and read all the reasoning why. And along with that, we're going to show you the DraftKings pricing rankings for these golfers. So we're basically going to just break down the top of the board, see where we stand, and go from there. So, Spencer, at number 10 in the rankings over here, we got Adam Scott ranked number 10th for DraftKings. Joe Idoni has Nick Taylor ranked number 10th. And you have got Ben Griffin ranked number 10th. Hot off the top rope, number 10. Hit me with why Benny Boy is your number 10 guy.
That's one of the big outliers for me this week. Like, you're going to see my rankings get very similar to what you have for DraftKings for the most part here in a second, but there was a lot that my model liked about Ben Griffin. So I ran 7 main categories. As I always say, those 7 main categories incorporate a lot into the mix to it. It's never quite as simple as it looks on the sheet. And that's something to where if you ever have any questions of what exactly went into that, you can feel free to ask me. But of those 7 categories, Ben Griffin landed inside of the top 10 3 of those times. I thought that was a really interesting takeaway, and that's one of the reasons why he ends up climbing to number 10 for me. There were a little over 10 golfers who ended up grading in the top 60 of every single category that I ran. The majority of them are your usual suspects that you would find at the top, and I noted this on Twitter today. I've added this into my DraftKings article over the last few weeks. And if you look at what happened last week with those players, they were pretty much every single name was, or not pretty much every single name was inside the top 40 there. I think Ricky Fowler might've been the worst finisher of that group there. But, you know, I'm always trying to find safety in that portion of my model. Ben Griffin ended up landing there as a guy who's in the mid 7,000s on DraftKings. So, for me, that's going to be one of my outlier plays. Definitely going to be more aggressive than public consensus on him. Couldn't quite get there in the outright market, although I will say, Byron, I did very much consider punching the ticket, but I thought this was a very funky outright board where it was one of those Scotty-esque weeks where the top of the board all of a sudden gives you that 3-1 golfer. I don't know if Rory necessarily has that Scotty push to the mix there. We can talk about where we have Rory and where he is in my model and what we exactly have him at. But interesting week because there are a lot of names beneath them that I wish would have been slightly higher in price. And we unfortunately didn't get that. So normally in those situations, when we get a model output where my model loves the top of the board, but it doesn't show value on their price, I normally either want to take long shots like Ben Griffin or be completely underexposed to the tournament. Sometimes both of those two things thrown into the mix there. I ended up being underexposed to the tournament. Ben Griffin was the first name that didn't get clicked from that mix, though, for me.
Yeah, Ben's very interesting, Spencer. He's fascinating. He's got one of the crazier, he's from a safety perspective, 57% T40 rate, you know, and that is significantly better than his, you know, top 10 rates, which is like 11%, you know, so you're usually going to quadruple your top 10 rate. 57% top 40 rate is good, you know, for the price you get him for, his, you know, just overall betting odds.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons my model also had the same output there with the way that I built it. He's a much safer golfer than the upside totals. Like I always talk about negative trajectory for upside. That was a golfer for me that had slight negative trajectory, but a ton of safety.
Yeah. Mike's over here causing nonsense for us. I did not say this. I know I would lose this. I would probably, it would be the last 40-yard dash I ever do, and I would not beat Spencer in a 40-yard dash. I know my limits, Mike, and I was sipping on some Ruthies, but I was still speaking sanity. So
there's
causing
I feel like from an athletic perspective, there's a handful of strengths that I have. Running quickly would be one of them. So
yes.
If you and I go and we don't even need to play a round of golf. We could play any, you're going to beat me in anything golf related if we actually go have a golf outing. But if we could have this be, I don't know, tennis, basketball, running, like baseball. I'll take my chances in those 3 areas.
Yes, I would probably stand the best chance of beating you in tennis, but because of my ability, not because of how bad you'd probably be even better at tennis. Obviously, that's your best trait. So I
Well,
would.
I'll tell
have
you
a
this:
top
when I played, I was the number 1 person in Nevada. I was top 100 ranked, so like in the nation. So I don't think you would win at tennis, Byron.
No,
But
no, I wouldn't. But I played tennis my entire high school career, so I'd be pretty close. I'd be like good. I would get my ass kicked, but I think I'd at least be competitive. I think versus a dash, I think I don't know, dude. Is it downhill? That's the question. Anyway,
if you can ride the bike, you're gonna win.
yes, a bicycle, I've got you covered too. Like my low key baseline cardio is actually kind of solid, but yeah, when I fall off a bicycle, it hurts. So
Yeah.
we're experiencing that now. Okay, so who do I even have here for my guy? Akshay Bhatia. Yes, beautiful. The fun part about this is I don't know who my rankings are because I just paste them all in. So he's going to kind of go and just take it as it comes. But Akshay, if you think about his putter has figured itself out. Now, the thing is, he's got worse since the win. I feel like finally we've had a bit of time to kind of finally just see what the world's like as a PGA Tour winner. Not an alternate event winner, a PGA Tour Valero Texas Open winner. He's exceptionally good, Spencer, between 100 and 200 yards when it comes to the irons. He's not the longest guy in the world, so I feel like this kind of a venue definitely helps his driving ability, and we know he can make tons and tons of putts. So I love Akshay at number 10. I would be interested to kind of go there. I was tempted to bet him top 20, but I have my card, I think, for the week. So we'll see how that goes.
I will say this. I really like this new structure we have, and it's something that we're going to try to incorporate more, and we'll add some fun flair and all of that to the mix. But if you could reveal my number 8, I will have a conversation based off of this too, because I think there's a lot to like about Akshay Bhatia this week. I talked about Ben Griffin being one of those names that I considered in the outright market. Akshay would have been the other one. I wish this would have been a price that was a little bit higher, because I agree we've seen to have had a negative turn in some of the statistical data recently for whatever the mix is there. But 8th for me overall, 7th for upside. The safety numbers were really the concerns, but I thought 8,100, you're getting a really nice profile of a golfer if the ownership ends up being low enough.
And I think maybe people will be off him because they like, okay, he's checked out after the win. He went win at the Valero, the Masters the next week, the RBC Heritage the following week. Then got a week off a little bit. Then I think the week before they had the Bunny Ranch that he played at CJ Cup. I don't think he did that. And then PGA Championship. And then like, it's just been, the guy needs to just take a break. So I think he's had enough time since the win to kind of bounce back. Also, I like him in these smaller fields, not smaller, weaker fields. I think he's got a good chance there too. So I like him that he's number 8 for you, Spencer. I like him that he's number 8. All right. For our DraftKings number 9, Maverick McNeely ranks as the 9th most expensive golfer. Joe Idoni's got Alex Noren ranked number 9. And Spencer, you've got Taylor Pendrith ranked number 9. So hit us with your Taylor Pendrith take.
So I have Maverick McNeely 13th, just to throw it out there of where I have him. I'll get to Alex Noren a little bit later. There was a lot that my model liked about Pendrith. Really good price tag for him at 7,600. Like I talked about it getting much more standard at a certain point. Like clearly the Pendrith answer isn't that going to be that when you have Griffin at 7,500 and Pendrith at 7,600. Those are not top 10 golfers according to DraftKings pricing, but a lot that my model liked about Pendrith from some of those key critical distances that we're going to have this week, like par 5 scoring, the par 4 scoring that he had, all of that gave him a top 25 projected weighted score inside of my sheet. 12th for me in scrambling. I added a little bit of putting and extra emphasis into the mix there. And then 41st overall, when you took the height and proximity for this venue and the short game. I know that doesn't necessarily sound great, but when you look at some of these proximity totals from him, 98th overall and all of a sudden that you can throw a putter into the mix in some of the short game and he climbs into the top 45 there. That's kind of the output that I was looking for a golfer that had the skill sets, even if he didn't have the proximity I was looking for, because I think for most people, those proximity numbers are going to push him way down a model. And it did hurt him a little bit in my sheet, but inside the top 13 every single way that I ran it, like that was very encouraging output for a golfer that's 7,600.
There's a lot to be said about Taylor Pendrith and the Canadians in general. I think they've got a very good chance, Spencer, of potentially running away or winning it again this week. There's 5 of them that are really, really good, maybe 6 if you include Adam Svensson. But they've got like these 5 guys that can really get shit done. You know, like Taylor Pendrith has just won a PGA tournament. Like he also plays really nicely on these shorter golf courses, Spencer. I've got him ranked 16th, 18th in my two rankings there, but it's just right outside the mix. And I will say that I've bet Taylor Pendrith for a top 10 bet. I think that's the way to bet him. He's doing it 1 in every 4 starts for the last year. So love Taylor Pendrith, and I love him on these club down courses too, especially with the putter. He's a low-key decent putter. So as we're talking about these Canadians, and this is not like a bit, you know, like they actually grade out really well for me for the most part, right? Like Mackenzie Hughes, Spencer, must be one of the few golfers on the PGA Tour that's the most course specific, environment specific there is, because these birdie fests, these kind of golf courses where you have these like difficult situations for Mackenzie to kind of separate himself. These kind of venues that we see, these like club down situations where scrambling's important, where short game makes a big difference. Mackenzie Hughes is very good in that department. So his recent form has also been really solid. You know, like in 2024, he's ranked as like the 4th best golfer in total strokes gained for me. So there's a lot to like about Mackenzie Hughes heading into this week. So he's 5th in total strokes gained, which is low key good, you know, and he's a Canadian. He can putt well, and that's what I'm looking for. So give me Mackenzie Hughes.
I've talked a lot about Mackenzie Hughes this season in positive and negative terms. And I feel like he's one of those golfers that I have been or at least my model has been very accurate on over the course of the year. Like we made a joke a handful of weeks ago. I faded him one week and it was successful. Then I backed him the next week and it was successful.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. You know, it's like he's so volatile.
Yeah, he's 17th in my model this week. He's inside the top 10 for safety. A golfer like Mackenzie Hughes is never going to have necessarily the upside profile that I want just because he's so putter reliant in a lot of these ways. But 17th overall is about as high as he will ever get from me. And one of the things that I loved about his profile is I ran this from a weighted strokes gain total perspective. So that's going to look at specifically this course over a 2-year running time frame. But then I also ran it from a recent standpoint. So that would be just the last 24 rounds for exactly what the dispersion of scoring you would expect of the 4 critical strokes gained outputs that you would get. And he jumped from 36th to 18th. So he's trending in the right direction right now with his game for a course that he should be able to find success. And, if we want to talk about the Canadians here, there was almost this, like for a basketball term, there was almost like a lid on the rim for a while where they couldn't actually get the job done. And all of a sudden, Nick Taylor hits a couple shots from deep, and now anybody maybe that feels like they can win it. I've made this before, like this comparison. You look at people that used to run the mile years and years and years ago, and nobody could break a 4-minute mile. And then all of a sudden, one person does it, and you realize that it's doable. And then all of a sudden you have a million people doing it back to back to back. This might end up being, and I'm not saying it's necessarily going to happen this year, but I think the Canadians are going to be motivated. And this is a really good, like you have, I would say at least on the very like forefront of this, I guess 4 that have like a legitimate chance to win this that are inside of the top 20 of my model, inside the top 18, if we want to get technical. So, a little bit less than 25% of the field is inside of that group for me.
Yeah, that's the thing. You know, when Taylor Pendrith is $7,600 and he's the cheapest of those 5 Canadians we're speaking about, He's won on the PGA Tour, you know. Nick Taylor's won. Adam Hadwin's survived the Goldberg tackle on the 18th green from last year. You know, like, these guys have done the greatest things in golf in the last little while. So they've definitely got it figured out. So Spencer,
Adam Hadwin might be the one where there's like scar tissue just from what happened to him last year. I think the rest of them think they can win. And Adam Hadwin's going to have like flashbacks to the...
I just hope that another Canadian wins and Adam Hadwin runs on there like Bubble Boy in like a big old bubble balloon with like champagne inside and just like, just full on protecting himself as best he can. But I have no idea what he's going to get up to. But they have a chance, Spencer. They have a chance. So DraftKings has got Sam Burns ranked number 8 in their rankings, while Joe Idoni has got Adam Scott ranked number 8. You've got Akshay Bhatia. You've already spoken about him. I'll dive into my guy, which is Seamus Power. I've got Seamus all the way ranked number 8 here. I did a little bit of Maniac Override. I will not lie to you. He was about 20th or so in the model before I tinkered with some stuff. When you think about Seamus Power, you think about the Bermuda Championship out in Shaka, Bermuda, and it's this short positional golf course that requires accuracy off the tee. You know, the rough is like this Bermuda sticky, spongy rough. I like Seamus Power at these kind of golf courses. You know, a 7,000 par 70, 7,000 yard par 70 is exactly where I want to play Seamus. He's 110 to 1, Spencer. I've already bet him for a top 20 at plus 300. He's been rattling off like top 21s like crazy the last little while. His irons are moving in the right direction. We're just waiting for this putter to show up. Maybe the short golf course can help the putter resurge. So that's my guy. Any take on Seamus Power? Do you have him inside the top 20 even in your model?
I have him deep.
He's going to take a beating because of your long run stuff, likely. The short term is a lot more exciting for Seamus.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the recent form that he's put together: 16th at the Wells Fargo, 12th, 26th at the Valspar. A couple missed cuts thrown into the mix there, which hurts the model also because I do run current form over the past. It's a weighted current form. I don't want to say it's just over the past 10 tournaments. It's recalculated in a little bit different way than that. With the way that I run it inside of my sheet, you can run it for 5 or 10 rounds with it. But 35th for safety, so the safety numbers like him a little bit more. Upside 73rd. That's kind of where that long-term data is hurting him inside my sheet.
Seamus does not have a top 10 in the last 12 months.
Yeah.
That's why I bet him top 20, because he's got a few of those. So just taking baby steps with our Irish boy. All right. Number 7 for DraftKings. They've got a hidden column, in fact. So we'll get back to that, and I'll hit this button over here when my clumsy fat sausage fingers gets Corey Connors as DraftKings number 7 ranked guy. Joe Idoni has Sam Burns as number 7. And Spencer, you've got Sam Burns as number 7 as well. So you and Idoni ranking up Sam Burns as your number 7th ranked golfer. Hit me.
I think when we look at this from a leverage perspective, and I don't know where his ownership's going to come in, and I don't want to make a statement, because I said this last week with Keegan Bradley, that I thought he was going to be the pivot away from all the options, and he was pretty popular. Like, a lot of people bet him, and rightfully so. You ended up getting a T2 from him.
Yay.
Yeah, another T2 for you, Byron. But did I not tell you, by the way, just very quickly, like Colin Morikawa, Keegan Bradley, I think your luck on it ended up having one of them not actually win the tournament, but it's always those ones that just miss my outright card that are the ones that seem to be making a run if I don't actually hit the winners. So Burns is a very intriguing choice this week for leverage. I think he's going to be lower owned than a lot of these names. He's been much more boom or bust than these options, but there was a lot that my model liked about him. 3rd at short courses, 6th at these par 70s, 10th in my model for weighted scoring. A lot of that heightened proximity and short game that I keep bringing up, he was 7th in my sheet there. And that's really going to be carried from the short game beyond anything else. But even when I look at just the proximity ranges that are going to be increased here, which is going to be a lot of your shorter stuff and then your longer stuff also into the mix, 59th for me in weighted proximity in that range. You compare that to his baseline everywhere, 81st overall. So there's an increase in projected proximity. And I always talk about Thagala in this nature. And I think Sam Burns is another name that needs to be discussed in this fashion. if you can ever give me increased proximity from some of these options, that's where we see them pop in. I really wanted to try to figure out a way to get to Sam Burns. I did not love the outright price from where it opened. If we could have been 10 points higher than this, he would have been on my card.
There's a very big reason I want to play Sam Burns. I've got him ranked third. On my research stream last night, it was Sahith Theegala and Sam Burns that were my two main guys I was looking to target heading into the odds drop today. Sahith was priced actually better than I expected, and Sam priced worse. So, and they kind of almost priced themselves. Are they priced in the same range, basically? I'd say, which to me doesn't make sense. Like Sam hasn't really shown us what Sahith has. So, like you mentioned, Spencer, like the putting, if I'm looking for putters and good wedge players, really, I know I've said accuracy as well, but Sam Burns is a very good wedge player. And I think when that driver gets going, then he's going to be like dialing in the wedges, rolling in the putts. We can see Sam Burns do what Rory did at this golf course. If he plays the way we know Sam Burns can play, is he going to play the way Sam Burns can play? Like that's the question. So I was interested. I can't justify his current price. What is his current outright price right now? Like it's disgusting.
I think in the 25 to 1 range.
Like I can't do that. I'm sorry. I understand this field strength, but yuck, yeah. 28 to 1 for Sam. Maybe if you get like a 35 or something.
That's what I wanted was 35. I do think we're getting a little bit closer at 28. Where is that 28 to 1 out of curiosity?
At MGM.
Okay, so that's the best number. I don't see anything better than 25 outside of that.
No.
I think that there's a chance he drifts. You always have a player that's in this range that goes in the opposite direction, and maybe Burns is that name. And I talked about this in the RotoBaller Discord when I released my outright card. I essentially had the very top of the board in strength would be the three guys at the very top, which we'll get to in a second, and then this cluster of the Sam Burnses, the Tom Kims, a lot of names in that range, and we'll talk about a couple of those in a second. But unfortunately, you look at a Tom Kim, he opened at 50 to 1. You look at a Sam Burns, he opens at 25 to 1. I really don't see a difference in those two's profiles, and that's what makes it so challenging, where I would rather just grab Tom Kim at 40 to 50 to 1 than, and maybe this is where the sports books are just really smart and they price everybody out for a golfer that really fits this golf course well. Because if Sam Burns goes and wins this tournament, like we can clip this after the fact. I'm not going to be shocked if he's the winner of this event.
No, I mean, it fits perfect, but they don't want us to let us be the winners with him.
Exactly.
That's the thing. These sports books. So we got to find a winner and make him pay.
It's Xander at the PGA Championship. Yes. He was even more reduced than that, but books really did not want you to make that wager. And you saw that number moving down steadily throughout the week. And it happens almost every tournament Xander's played in 2024. And it finally came to the point where he actually won one of those. And, Xander said the joke himself on one of the podcasts. Everybody was betting him. And then the number moved to a point where nobody bet him and everybody didn't get nobody got the win when they had bet him the entire year. And I don't know if everybody's been betting Sam Burns the entire year, but they definitely have priced him out. I can promise you that. They've made this difficult.
They have. They're pricing him like he's playing when he started the year. He's not playing like that anymore, but we can see him playing like that at a golf course like this. So I've got Adam Scott as my 7th ranked guy. A lot of his stuff is coming in. Like, I love the course fit for him. I love the putting intensity that we're going to see at this venue. For me, that's a big thing. Adam Scott's a really good putter. Adam Scott's a really good birdie maker. Adam Scott's a really good easy scoring conditions guy. Adam Scott is just not bringing it right now either, though. He's one of the most illustrious top 20 guys in my model. He's also not finishing inside the top 20 for any of his last half dozen starts. So where is Adam Scott? I don't think he knows. I don't care. He can be 7th in my model right now. He can be 12th, 2nd. I'm not interested. I need to see some movement in the right direction from him.
I think that's the challenging thing. And I assume based off of that answer, you didn't do any hand-done work with him. Like, that's where he actually landed, correct?
That's Adam for you. Yes.
So he landed 4th for me, so we can bring him up for me very quickly on it. And I very much considered regressing some of the statistics for all the reasons that you've just talked about. I have run into the spot for what feels like 2 months now, where I don't want to say he's broken my model, because I do think that DraftKings and some of these prices on him have become much more indicative to what my math is saying than maybe what we had 2 months ago when this whole thing started.
Yeah.
But it's definitely been a lack of high-end production from him. My numbers really like him. I don't know if it's going to be one of those spots on DraftKings to where everybody gets frustrated and doesn't want to play him. Like, I thought last week was a really nice spot for him because he was a sub 5% owned guy, and because everybody thought he was overpriced. He was even more expensive than this. And I could see some people wanting to jump back in, but I don't know. I'd like to see where the ownership lands, Byron, because if this turns into another sub 5-6% route, like, I'll take a chance there.
Yeah.
But if he starts trending up in ownership, there is a lackluster upside that you discussed.
Well, Spencer, Joe's got him ranked above market price. You've got him ranked significantly above market price. I've got him ranked above market price. We've got a problem. I think if we all finding value on Adam Scott, the market will. I was looking at a plus 150 top 20 for him, which he's doing regularly in a long run basis. Recently, not. So I've always said some of the best bets you make are the ones you don't. And that's going to be the one for me. I'm not going to be playing Adam Scott this week, even though the model is suggesting it.
He has 3 matchups that I just very quickly want to get to in the space. So he's priced against Maverick McNeely. This is a book that has it minus 115 both ways as their standard juice, but minus 115 both ways there. He's priced against Corey Connors. He's plus 116 to Corey Connors is minus 139. And then he's minus 110 both ways with Cameron Young. Whatever that means in the grand scheme of things, like, those are 3 golfers that I more or less like. Like, I'm probably lower than consensus on Cameron Young. I would lean the Adam Scott route there. I think the other 2 are probably true coin flips.
Yeah, I think Cameron Young, the problem with him for me though, Spencer, is the fact that the putter, I'm really looking at guys that can make putts and in abundance, and he's just not going to be taking care of the putting surfaces like we expect.
What did you have him overall?
Cameron Young for me is, let me pull him up here. I've got him ranked, oh boy, scroll a million miles, 10th. No, this is the wrong model. I am pulling him up now Cameron Young is coming up 4th for me.
I have him 20th.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, so I'm definitely a little bit lower. Very quickly before we move on, I see Joanne and Jim had questions. Yes. I'll let you touch on Jim's question, since you seem to be a little bit more on Seamus than I am.
Yeah, I'm in on Seamus. I don't know how I feel about Shane, because if this turns into a minus 15 type situation, Shane Lowry finished second year when he played here in 2019, and he got to minus 15. I think that's the lowest Shane Lowry's ever got in a tournament. You know, like, that is Shane Lowry's peak performance in easy scoring conditions. We just don't see Shane Lowry getting to minus 15 in these kind of events. And if that's the situation it's getting to, I don't know about Shane Lowry. But what are we even saying here? How about an Irish double, Lowry and Power? Like, are we trying to bet them top 10, Jim? Is that what we're doing? Or top 20? Maybe bet them top 20. I feel like that's a solid situation if you want to roll with that. But Joan over here mentions thoughts on Cole. Course fit, anything can happen. Just thinking maybe time for a win after Davis Riley, Spencer.
The upside portion of my model always likes him. The recent form is very bad.
Very,
very, very bad. So that's coming from somebody who runs things from a long-term perspective. So he's going to not as quickly move down my sheet as most people's. And you see that with him. He's 29th overall. He's 11th for upside. That's the high-end marks we're talking about here for a really cheap golfer, to where at cheap or low enough ownership, I guess I could throw a dart with that, but 59th for safety, like you can see where this profile gets very bad very quickly. So, I mean, if there's even any inkling that I have that people are wanting to play him, I would rather just let him beat me. Like this is not the situation of last week in my mind of JT Poston. JT Poston had perceived bad form going to a course that I thought he was a perfect fit for, and I didn't think the data was quite as bad as a lot of people thought. Yeah. I think this is a spot with Eric Cole here where statistically it's a good course, but the form is legitimately that bad.
Yeah. He might have found a little bit of love at the PGA Championship, but I don't know. He missed the cut again at the Charles Schwab. So tough times. So Joe Idoni for the 6th ranked golfer for him has got Corey Connors. That's perfectly fitting because Corey Connors does not have a top 5 in the last 12 months, but that's neither here nor there. We'll chat about that when we do. Tom Kim, Spencer, he's your 6th ranked guy.
I think Tom Kim, when he opened at 50-1, was probably the best bet on the board. I would argue that anything that you're going to still find is going to be value. I had him sub 30-1 as the proper price. And that's kind of what I'm talking about here. When you look at Tom Kim and Sam Burns, like my model preferred Tom Kim when directly comparing these two to one another. It has Tom Kim in this range of 28-1 being proper. It has Burns more in this range of 33-1 being proper. I think Kim for the price, it's one of those public perception things where he started so poorly for 2024. And if you look at what he's provided recently, the off the tee data starting to turn around. I know that the iron proximity numbers will still leave a lot to be desired, and he hasn't necessarily been stellar with that portion of his game. The thing I like the most, though, and this is from a long-term answer again, so take this with a grain of salt, 5th in my model from the proximity ranges where this course was above PGA Tour average. This feels like the ideal setup. If I was going to make one outright wager this week, it would have been on Tom Kim just because of the number that I got. And I think when you're looking for value on DraftKings, I don't know what his ownership is going to come in at. I don't really think I care at this point because I can't imagine it's going to be massive, and it's very easy for me to just get exponentially overweight to him. So 6th in my model overall, but if you want to look at this for upside, he climbs into the top 5, and this is a golfer, as I talked about, that's 40-1 or higher on the odds board and in the $8,000 range. So that's the profile for me where I'm going to try to aggressively attack. It's very similar, Byron, to the Sepp Straka answer last week. Like these two golfers graded very similarly for what my model thought about them. Yeah. At very similar prices, by the way.
And guess what? Sepp was the only guy inside the top 5 that lost strokes putting. So congrats on that outright selection from us last week. We were just running hot to trot over here on the RotoBaller show the last little while. What is my model doing with Shane Lowry ranking 6th? I don't know. Jim mentions that he's going to be playing the Irish trifecta for top 20 bets. I actually don't mind that. I think Seamus is going to be obviously the most unlikely to finish inside the top 20. I do have a Seamus at top 20 bet though, so I like it. That's going to really help out because Lowry and Rory, at least half the time or so, are finishing inside the top 20. So you got a decent shot there, Jimbo. The thing with Shane Lowry, he putted lights out at the PGA Championship, and he putted lights out here in 2019. The chances of lightning striking 3 times, Spencer, is not good, in my opinion. So Shane Lowry's going to ball strike this place to death. I just don't see him making enough putts to kind of really contend for a win. I was tempted for a top 20, but I'm going to leave Shane Lowry alone despite the markets. He's not priced right now.
That's what I was going to say. Like my biggest concern with Shane Lowry just comes down to exactly how he got priced. I don't think if we look specifically on DraftKings that he is a top 4 name in this field. I don't necessarily have problems with him. If he would have been $9,000, we could have a different discussion here. If he would have been 50-1 on the odds board, we could have a different discussion, but I can't personally get there for a golfer that negative trajectory in my model for upside, good safety numbers. I don't know what the best price is off the top of my head right now. My model is showing a 20. So I'm going to assume he drifts a little bit before this is all said and done, but it's really hard to get to him at 20-1. This feels like one of those situations where I know the recent form has spiked, like specifically if we look at the PGA Championship more than anything else with that, but that victory with Rory is probably weighing a little too heavily in his profile. Like we're looking at a golfer in Rory who's 3.5 to 1 to win this tournament. I don't think that necessarily should mean that Lowry gets that boost along with him.
No. And Spencer, all of this recent form is putting, and he's been putting like ass, and then he just gains 9 strokes putting in one tournament. Like, to gain 9 strokes putting and you lose strokes putting in round 4 is just incredible. You know, like, woo.
When Lowry went to Sunday at the PGA Championship, I don't know at what point it was. I think he was 15 under par on the leaderboard. And I ran a projection because I was curious to see what my model thought he should have been. And he should have been 1 over par. He had a 16-shot discrepancy from his baseline projection with his short game and his actual output. And this is a golfer that, sure, he's a good putter, but that's my model incorporating the good putting into the mix. And he's still 16 shots different than what he should have been. So
yeah,
I mean, that was a really weird return that he put together. Like the ball striking wasn't necessarily there, but he's fine in my sheet. Like he's a top, like Jim talked about it. And I don't know if you're necessarily going to get the value as a top 20, but if there was an ideal way I wanted to back him and you said you have to bet Shane Lowry this week, it would either be in a matchup if I could find the right opponent, which is probably going to be difficult, or it would be a top 20 bet because he does have that safety profile at least.
Yes. He's the most accurate driver of the golf ball, by the way.
Yeah.
Him, Sepp, and there's another guy, Siwoo, and there's one other guy in the field. I think that's right up here. I think it might even be Noren. I don't know. But let's see who DraftKings number 5 golfer is for the pricing, and it's Alex Noren, baby. And we've got MP in the house. I love how when things align up. He's like, we're going balls deep with Noren and Mitchell this week. So I'm all in on the balls deep for Noren. We'll get to that here shortly. Joe Idoni has got Tommy Fleetwood ranked number 5, Spence, and you have Alex Noren tied up. So hit us with your Noren take. By the way, I've got Noren ranked number 9 in my adjusted model for safety. He didn't quite crack it for upside.
Yeah, he moves in the wrong direction for upside for me also. He's 5th overall, 8th for upside, 4th for safety. Just look at what he's provided recently. He is a top 25 machine. The really only drawback that I could find for him would be, I assume he's going to be very popular. I also don't necessarily think that's a problem. Like, you just have to be aware of that. And if you want to play him, I would just go massively overweight and just know what you're signing up for there. I think Noren's profile is, I don't want to say, we'll call it the 1B version of Tommy Fleetwood here.
Yes, I would say that's fair, Spencer. Statistically, they're very similar in a way. And from a results standpoint, they're consistent. Their floor is ridiculous. But outside
of to win for whatever reason.
The 3rd place finish at the CJ Cup was kind of like a backdoory type situation. We really haven't seen him contend. Every time he gets close, it's like this magnetic like buffer, you know, like you get within a few shots of the lead and then you got to do something stupid, right? Like, so, but I've bet Alex Noren top 20 for plus 130. That's the way to approach him this week. I think I'm going to leave him alone in DFS. Wait for him to finish T17 at 23% ownership. And hopefully my pivots finish T15 and make a few more birdies, you know, kind of thing. So we'll see what happens there. But Alex Noren, I'm quite bullish on this week for specific markets. Look at my man, Main P. Yeah. Speaking about Mitchell and Noren. So these two guys, Keith Mitchell, for median strokes gained in 2024, ranks 4th in this field. Keith Mitchell's ball striking in this field, 3rd. Keith Mitchell's best finish in 2024, 9th. Like, at the Cognizant Classic and some other random at Amex, he backdoored an Amex T9. Like, these are not big boy events, and he just doesn't get it done, Spencer. I need to fix this because this is unjustifiable in my opinion. Keith doesn't have a top 5 in his recent track record. Like, what is he doing ranked 5th in my model? So he needs to potentially get dropped down. I love him for a top 20 bet potentially. He's been crushing those, but at the same time, I think he's experiencing the same thing that Scottie Scheffler never showed us. We've got this ball striking masterclass coming through, but the putting is holding him back. And I think it's really starting to mess with his head. Whereas Scotty managed to survive and make it through to the other side. Keith is just melting down now on Sundays when he starts missing putts.
Yeah, number 1 in my model for weighted total driving, number 13 for the proximity ranges that are going to be heightened here. I mean, that's one of the ways of how he climbs to number 5 in a model. You go the ball striking route and he's going to look good. Some of the short game stuff, my model just absolutely hates with him, and that's what keeps holding him back for all the reasons that you talked about. I think at $8,700, he is too expensive for the lack of upside that is bringing it, to the mix here. So I am not going to play him for the price tag of where we're at. You can obviously have a different discussion potentially if he comes in with no ownership, but even still, like he's a fringe top 25 guy in all 3 ways that I ran it. He was 24th overall, 24th for upside, 25th for safety. This is a golfer that we're talking about that is the 11th person in betting odds and the 12th person on DraftKings. Like, there's just not value in that number for me.
Yeah, that's the thing. And the model, like the ball striking is messing everything up, because that is the most predictable thing you can find in golf is driving and iron play next, after driving. And he's doing both incredibly well, but just not what's going on? 1 + 1 isn't equaling 2. It's equaling like 1.5 right now for him. So he needs to figure out how to convert this form because I think he's going to drive himself crazy if he doesn't. So, good luck there, Keith. Have yourself fun with the putting woes. Shane Lowry, like we mentioned, ranked number 4. Spencer, I'm not entirely sure how I feel about that. Cameron Young for Joe Idoni ranked number 4. You've already spoken about Adam Scott. So, nice little freebie of rankings there till we get to number 3, which has got Tommy Fleetwood ranked number 3, which is kind of almost fitting, Second to second place is exactly where Tommy Fleetwood should find himself. Joe Idoni has Sahith Theegala ranked number 3. You've got Tommy Fleetwood ranked number 3. So let's chat about Tommy.
I think when we look at ownership here, and I'm curious to see where this lands, it is so easy to get to Rory. Like, he's too cheap based off of what his outright price is, the form that he's bringing, the course history, even the Canadian Open form in general that he has if you bring it to other venues. There's a reason why he's the favorite to win this golf tournament, but we didn't put him at 13,500 for decisions to have to be made. I would argue, and I hope I'm not right with this because I would like to find a way to get to Rory in a lot of these spots, but I'm afraid that this is going to be 40-45% Rory plus, and it's one of those situations where it just makes it challenging. I think Theegala is also going to be very popular. And for me, inside of my model, Theegala and Fleetwood are virtually a coin flip of what my math thinks. And even if we move forward right now into the number 2 choice for me, which is Theegala, you don't really have that big of a difference. It's going to come down to ownership of exactly which route I want to go with it. I think the top of the board was very accurately priced. Very quickly before we move on, just the Pendrith conversation that I see going on in the chat. There were 3 golfers for me in the $7,000 range that graded inside of the top 60 for every single category that I ran this week. I talked about Ben Griffin. Taylor Pendrith would be the second. The third would be a name that is the 22nd person for me overall, but inside the top 60 everywhere, Davis Thompson. So I think Thompson is another intriguing name to keep in mind, but those are like the 3 safest $7,000 options that I have who also have upside to them.
Absolutely. Like we've discussed, Taylor Pendrith is a PGA Tour winner this year, and it seems like he was unhealthy prior to that and is now healthy again and can get it done. I think he gained like 1.5 strokes approach when he won at TPC Craig Ranch, I think, or something in that range. Not a lot so he can get it done without the approach situation. So I'm a big fan of Pendrith. Got an outright, a top 10 bet on him at plus 450. So big fan of Taylor Pendrith this week. Spence, Sahith Theegala. Like you mentioned, the volatility though with him is there, but the upside is also there. I finally managed to put together all my bets and kind of track them backwards now. Sahith Theegala's cost me in my Breaking 100 series $20 and a few cents in the outright market. Hasn't cashed, but he's won me $60 in T5s. Like, it's been amazing, you know. So I've bet him again this week. T5 at plus 400. I know that number's pretty crappy, but I have to bet that along with the 22-1 that I found this morning at Bet Rivers. I'm looking for good putters. He's the only good putter in the top of the board. Like, looking for good putters anywhere. I think $8,300 is the next top 10 putter this year. Like, there's not a lot of good putters at the top of the board, Spencer. Like, elite putters. You know, Sahith is the best putter in the field right now, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, he's fourth for me for weighted putting. That's from a longer duration of time, but there's a lot to like about his profile. Like I said, essentially for me, you're looking at this position where Rory was pretty, I don't want to say substantially, but pretty substantially ahead of everybody else. And you can see that with all of us having him number one, and that's kind of the expected output there. You look at Theegala's putting, you even look at Rory's putting, though, for my weighted returns. Like, some of my weighted expectation in putting that I had, and that's like a course-specific green complex outlook. And that's maybe why I was a little bit more bullish at the top of the board, to where I didn't want to have this massive outright card. Rory was inside the top 10 for me. Theegala was fourth. Fleetwood graded eighth. Alex Noren was 13th. Sam Burns was 11th. Pendrith was 6th. Like, that's further down the board, I guess, but at least an option that I think is a good bet this week. But you have a lot of those high-end sort of golfers that I like that gave me a putting return that was interesting. So I think it's very close between Theegala, Fleetwood, and it'll come down to ownership. The Rory game, and I'll let you talk about Rory a little bit since I've already discussed him, but great profile, great history at RBC Canadian Opens. He's going to be very popular, so you're just going to have to pick your poison on that one.
Yeah. The off the tee stuff is a free square for him essentially. But Spencer, if you rank inside the top 10, if Rory ranks inside the top 10 in accuracy and distance this week again, I will do something crazy on the show. Like, the chat can tell us. I know we've got a few more minutes going on. Yeah, we're going to do some final like thoughts down the board, but I'll do something wild. If Rory, let's just go top 5. If he finishes top 5 in driving distance and top 6 in accuracy like he did here in 2019, I don't know. Maybe you'll drink a half and half Arnold Palmer or something, and I'll drink like some vegetable juice or something. I don't know. But
well, if he does that, he's going to win again.
He's going to win again. But the thing is, Spencer, the putting, he also putted really nicely when he played here. He really hasn't had a week where he's gone nuts with the putter. You know, like Quayle was nutsos a little bit, but that was mainly to do with the driver, you know. So I don't know. I'm willing to take a gamble on not playing Rory this week, but and just go all in on Sahith and just hope that he can putt lights out.
Yeah.
We'll see. All right, let's chat about some more guys down the board, Spence. Hit me with your favorite play in the 10K range.
I'm going to go with Fleetwood, and the only reason why I give that answer when I have Theegala on my outright card and Fleetwood's not, it really just came down to the prices that I could find. I could get a 22-1 on Theegala. Fleetwood was more in that 18-1 range. Like, I just couldn't get there at 18-1 for a golfer that hasn't won on the PGA Tour. But I think that general assessment and outlook of him is going to give us an opportunity for him to be the lowest owned option. If it doesn't go that way and it's Theegala that's the lowest owned, then, you know, switch it to Theegala for my answer here. But I think from a leverage answer, Fleetwood is going to give me that.
I think you're spot on there, because I think those two, Rory and Sahith, will be very popular. Sahith getting the ownership discount, Rory being the Rory McIlroy defending RBC Canadian titan of the industry. Alex Noren in the 9s, wrapped up with Adam Scott at the bottom. Spence, who's your favorite? Who's your least favorite in the 9s?
I wrote in my article that it was Sam Burns because of leverage. I do think the best play, though, if you take ownership out of the mix, has to still be Alex Noren. Curious to see where that ownership ends up landing. I will say the worst play, I'm going to go with Cameron Young.
The worst play?
Yeah.
Sure. I can get behind that. I would also say Corey Connors for me it's basically they're the same person in a weird way. There's just a lack of like short game from both of them, which we're going to need. There's a bit more putting from Cam Young. Corey Connors being outside the top 100 in putting. His safety is going to be there with the ball striking being second in the field, but you can't not putt yet, man. You got to bank your putts.
There's 6 golfers in this range. 3 graded as a value, 3 did not grade as a value. The 3 that were not a value were Corey Connors, who gets a lot better when you look at safety markets. Really where he got taken down was because of the putter and the lack of win equity that came to the mix. I think he's a fine play that's going to give you a potential top 20 finish. I just don't know exactly where we're going to land there. Cameron Young was 20th, 23rd for upside, 18th for safety. And then McNeely, there was some decent safety numbers in my model, but kind of that same outlook that I got from Corey Connors. So those were the 3 negative marks that I had. The other 3, no matter what we keep saying about Adam Scott, he still looks good in my model every single week. Alex Noren, this is a correct price for me. I don't have a problem with the price. The ownership is where we have to make a decision. And then Sam Burns, I'm thinking, is going to be the boom or bust option at lower ownership, but we'll see where that ends up coming in.
Yeah. I have Sam Burns and Maverick McNeely as my 2 pivot plays in this range. Both 2 guys that can putt. I mean, I would not be shocked if either of them lands up leading the field in putting by the end of the week. You know,
I prefer Mav over Connors for that reason. Like, Mav jumps into the top 7 for me for safety. Like, there's enough reason that my model likes him for that. I do think the statistical data is going to leave a lot to be desired, but the putter is kind of that random ace in the hole equalizer that he can bring out at any moment.
But neither Connors nor Mav have a top 5 in the last 12 months. So fun stuff over there. You know, the happiness, sadness factory going on. In the 8th, Spencer, favorite, least favorite, Gourmet, cray.
I say my favorite is Tom Kim for all the reasons that I talked about. The 3 worst values for me, and I'll kind of just give an open-ended answer and then try to break this down. Keith Mitchell, Eric Van Rooyen, Nick Taylor. I do think Nick Taylor is getting a boost. He at least has an upside to his profile. That's fine if the ownership ends up being low enough. But this is also a spot where, you know, a Canadian has not won the RBC Canadian Open. And I assume from a media outlook here, he's going to have a lot on his plate entering this week. So the data didn't necessarily love him. Van Rooyen was outside of the top 50 for me. Some of the more recent stuff my model seemed to like for the way that he fit for this course. Like he jumped all the way to 5th when I ran this from a recent weighted strokes gain total. So it's a lot of that other stuff that's pushing him down from the long-term answer there. But I still think this is an expensive price tag that you're not necessarily getting any sort of a discount because of what we've gotten statistically from him inside my sheet.
Yes. And the hype. So I've just bet him top 5 and to win this thing at 70-1. He was the best price of the bunch. Mackenzie Hughes was like half the price of Nick Taylor to win a tournament. Like, just didn't make sense. You know, I was interested in betting Mackenzie at like 70, 80, maybe 90. Shows up 35-1, like casually. Like, what are we doing with that? But I'm with you, Spencer. I think DFS, Nick Taylor, I'm out because I think he's going to be too popular, you know.
People like going back to the defending champions, and he did it in such, not only do you win your home country's tournament when nobody's ever done it, but he did it in such grand fashion. Like everybody remembers how that finished. And it's one of the most iconic moments, I would say, of last season. And things like that are not forgotten. And unfortunately, when that's the answer, and maybe fortunately in this spot, because my model also does not love him for the way he's priced. So I would rather people just play him and fade him in that position. But I guess it's unfortunate if he ends up producing again, because I'm going to have 0% ownership to him.
Well, and that's the thing with him is he does or doesn't. You know, that's he's so boom or bust. But I know MP was chatting about Mav being that expensive. Dude, I get it. But on these greens, if he's going to putt, it's going to be fun for him. And then Jones saying punishment should be a shot of Blackberry Crown. Joan, we're looking for a punishment here, please. Like, I'm not going to drink Blackberry Crown for fun on this show. Like, I drink that stuff every day, you know? Like, we need some punishment over here for someone that, if Rory does some stuff. But I will give you my play here in the 6s. I'm out on Keith Mitchell. I think his ownership is going to be through the roof with his ball striking. We're going to have to wait and see what this guy can do. So, Spencer, hit me with your sevens. Who are you going to here? And before you do, actually, Joanne asked about, I'm blacking out on these podcasts lately because I can't remember if we discussed Nikolai Højgaard or not. I don't think we have, but he's one of the few guys I have in red in my model. Like, it's just, I'm not interested. Like, he's showing up in all these big time events like the PGA Championship and the Masters. And then any other time, he showed up nicely. First 4 starts on the PGA Tour, played nicely, finished second to Mathieu Pavon, kind of dwindled from then on out, and then has done nothing on the PGA Tour since. So I'm out on him.
I think at the right ownership percentage, there's an upside to his game, Byron. I don't know what the ownership's going to be. He was nearly dead last week, and I didn't like him. I do want to point that out. Like, not every single situation of a golfer performing badly necessarily means that, like, I benched him in my fantasy golf leagues, and I didn't make a good decision. I picked up Dylan Wu, and Dylan Wu also didn't make the cut. But that kind of shows where I was at last week with Højgaard, that I would make that decision to even begin with. He's a fringe top 60 guy for me in this tournament overall. He does have those upside numbers that jump him into the top 40, but this for me would have to be a situation where he is 1% owned, 1.5% owned, 2% owned, and I know exactly what I am signing up for, and I'm willing to take on that risk because the upside profile at least leaves something to be desired, where there's a lot of golfers in this section for me where I like, the public may think they have upside, and I'll give a really good example of that as my cray pick here. Like, that's a Kevin Yu for me. People are going to love the ball striking. He is the worst value that I have in my sheet, and I considered him. I didn't end up giving this head-to-head matchup. I was very close, and my model liked it, but I guess there was enough downside on the opposite end here that I didn't go that route. But I was very close to giving Adam Svensson over Kevin Yu at minus 115. Didn't end up getting there. I still think it's a fine wager if you want to go that direction. I ended up giving a different play of KH Lee over Sam Stevens. I got that at minus 120. That has moved up to minus 128. So, you know, we haven't done our work this week. We've only moved it 8 points, Byron. It's usually 80 points at this moment, but it's still in the range where I think that part of the thing that helped is when Data Golf puts a cap on it, and they won't let it move further than that. That's usually a good sign that the number will stay available for anybody who decides to jump in that general, like, 10-point range there.
I just love the battle that's going on between RotoBaller, Discord, and Data Golf.
It's an every week thing at this point. And I do want to say, like, Data Golf is brilliant in their numbers, super sharp. And these are very out of the box situations that keep coming up every single week. Like, I don't know how out of the box they actually are, but we're looking at situations here where, like, I think Data Golf has really good numbers. I am just different than them in these particular situations, but I think for the most part, they do a great job.
Exactly. And you'd probably find your rankings tie out to theirs pretty nicely for the most part. This is just the one spot that you have a variation in it. I just love the back and forth that you guys go on with every single week. It's just so funny to me. It's like, you got this, like, it's the Chicken and Peter Griffin situation that you guys are just like, every episode of RotoBaller PGA show, we got Spencer fighting with Data Golf's matchup rankings. I don't know. It's just too funny for me. At $7,200, I'll take a little bit of Seamus Power if he's not too popular. Doug Gim, if he's not too popular, Mr. Doug Gim really loves himself these golf courses, like the Players, where you get all these shots between 100 and 200 yards. Doug's not a good long iron guy. Love Doug Gim. Spencer, Kevin Yu ranks 11th upside for me, 36th in safety, though. You know, like, so
I don't even know how you get him to that number, to be honest. Like, I can understand the 11th because the ball striking is going to look immaculate in a model. Yeah. I don't even know how you get him to that safety number. Like, you're probably, I want to say, more accurate than my number there because my safety number is 113th. That's going to be that is so much lower than market consensus there. Like, there has to be a middle somewhere with it, but I still struggle to say that he's a top 50 play. The only thing that I will say about him that I do like is that there is an upside, so I can understand why you have your model saying that the upside would like him to a certain degree here. The ball striking numbers are great. I just, I can't get there on a golfer that is consistently losing so many strokes with his short game. And now we're going to a venue where the short game is really going to be impactful. So he was pretty substantially the worst value that I had on the board. Like for the betting with one of the ways that I run it, it's very different how I put it together, but he was almost double as bad as anybody else when it comes to proper price of where he was at. So that's kind of in his own world right there.
Yeah. And to just tie a bow on the Kevin Yu situation, he's averaging 5% more top 10s than Shane Lowry in the last 12 months.
It's interesting.
But at the same time, he's like 29% top 40 rate.
Boomer bust. That's exactly what this
that's exactly it. Yeah.
That's why I kind of wanted to take him on in a matchup. I'm a little bit worried that Svensson has a very similar profile to that. Maybe not quite as extreme, but I was comparing the two of them and trying to run the data back and forth to see where it landed. And while there was an edge and there was enough of an edge for me to take that bet, it was almost like the very bottom of my board battling a guy that was struggling to stay in the top 100 in a lot of those categories. Even though he graded overall well for me, Svensson was a fine grade. He was 33rd overall. I think that's a great return for him. And that's kind of why my model thinks that's a bet. But some of the actual data when I dove into it was just so boomer bust.
It's so boomer. Spencer, this matchup is like the fight that happens in the nosebleeds after everyone's been drinking Blackberry Crown and they paid $25 for their season ticket over at the Jets Stadium for week 17 when they're like 5-12. And you just got these guys fighting at the top there with no business to do that. So,
that's my favorite sort of a matchup or a battle. Like I'll take those on all day. I don't know if you saw on Sunday, I had Ben Martin over Gary Woodland. And even the day before that, I had Charlie Hoffman over Tyler Duncan. I think both of those two won. I think in those two matchups, those golfers combined to be like 25 over par. It's just straight to the bottom of the board where Woodland's bogeying the final, million holes that he played there. And Ben Martin actually clutched up for that bet. But I'm always trying to find the fade candidate. It's never the golfer that I'm looking to back. So when those battles get gross, that's what I expect. Like Svensson versus Kevin Yu will probably be miscut versus miscut.
Yeah.
I just kind of have a bad feeling that it might end up being the wrong end of that one where KH Lee had a little bit more safety in my model where I felt more comfortable.
Nah, that's cool, dude. I'm all for it. Let's dive into the sixes as we got some guys getting really excited about some sixes. Yeah, we got Aaron Badley and Troy Merritt are the only 5Ks we're going to chat about. Cool, we can chat about them when we get to the fives, I guess. I misread the comment there. Chan Kim in the 6Ks looks good. By the way, I posted something earlier about like guys whose strokes gained don't translate to top end finishes. Chan Kim's inside the top 20, I think, in strokes gained total for the 2024 season, yet doesn't have a top 5. Like he's got a top 10, I think, at Mexico. I was on that. But just where's the love for Chan Kim, when he's not finishing inside the top 5, but he's still kind of doing his thing, Spence. He's like one of the best golfers in the 6K range.
I agree. Inside the top 45 for me. I thought the best value in the $6,000 range, and this is where, look, I've said my things about Data Golf where we oppose each other. I thought the best value maybe in this entire tournament when this opened, and Data Golf crushed this number, crushed it to the point where they moved the entire math of what I thought was proper on it. But Mac Meisner, really intriguing value this week inside the top 25 for me. I talked about KH Lee that I liked his safety and matchups. So probably the two plays that I like the most. I would lean Meisner just because he has a higher ceiling. And I think down in the sixes here in large field GPP contests, I'm willing to kind of take more of a chance. But it also comes down to where does ownership end up landing? If Data Golf is pushing this narrative very hard on Meisner, I worry that he's going to be extremely popular. And if he's extremely popular, I don't necessarily want to get caught into a volatile $6,000 option. But profile looks great. Definitely don't have a problem with the way that the math is checking out.
Yeah. And what do you think about CT Pan, Spencer? I fancy him a lot. He's gained the 26th most total strokes this year in this field. He's really, really handy when it comes to just hitting greens in regulation. The 100 to 200 yard range for him is his best range versus 200 plus. he's substantially worse from that range. I'm all about CT Pan this week at $6,700.
I don't have a problem with him one way or another. He's borderline for me. The one area where he really does take a climb, though, which is probably where the recent data is even pushing him up higher in your model than mine. You look at the recent weighted strokes gain total, you gear that towards Hamilton here. He jumps into a top 20 player. That's really good for a $6,700 golfer.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I can certainly understand what you like about him, and even the long-term data, 51st overall. But there were some marks, some of the shorter courses and the strokes gain total on par 70s, kind of surprising where he graded in my model for me, outside of the top 100 in those territories. But I don't think he is a person that I don't want to have exposure to.
Yeah.
I do think when he opened up, maybe specifically on the odds board, more so than even DraftKings, I thought, and you even can see that with the way that his numbers graded compared to his rank there versus on DraftKings. Some of those outright numbers and top 20 sort of bets and top 40 bets and things of that nature were a little bit off compared to where some of the other guys were compared to him. And that's where my model seemed to have the most value as compared to his betting prices. So I could see him being popular. I do think he's an intriguing bet, though.
Yeah, he's boom or bust as well. So
yeah,
I'll rattle off a few more 6K guys. Ben Silverman and Andrew Novak, two of my favorite plays in this range for sure. Throw a little bit of nasty Nate Lashley in there for a top 50 ranked golfer for me in the 6K range. So that's going to be fancy. And then we're going to do Gary Woodland. And I know the reason you targeted him in round 4, Spencer, is because he was gaining like 7 strokes, 8 strokes putting through the first few rounds last week. I like that going into this week. We've seen Gary Woodland. I mean, this is the best Gary's played in a while. And whether or not it was with the putter, whether or not, doesn't matter. The fact that he's got the confidence now that also, Spence, guys coming that played nicely at Colonial, are you interested in doubling down in them again this week because of the similarities between the two courses, kind of? I know that it's different, but it's Texas and Canada. But from a par 70, 7,000 yard golf course, similar proximities on approach. No.
Well, here, yes, kind of. I guess the best way that I would answer that is any time that we can have quality form from a recent event for a cheap golfer who hopefully is not high owned, that's typically the recipe where you can take chances on form. What I end up hating are golfers that get the massive shift in price where 1 week they're 5,800 and the next week, after hypothetically coming in second place, they jump to 7,900 and they had 0 ownership, and now all of a sudden jump to this range where they have 15% ownership. I don't want to chase numbers. I am okay, though, if a player is playing well and they're still cheap and they're still low owned, you might be ahead of the market and a golfer has actually turned it around. So I do think there's something to be said about that, but you're walking a very fine line, in my opinion, because it's one of those situations that typically when people know about this, ownership ends up coming and typically the price shifts. Some of these options that you're talking about right now, we have not gotten the price shift, which is what makes them more appealing. I do want to very quickly note, though, like I'm a little disappointed because I wanted to bet Andrew Novak over Nick Hardy. That number got crushed, and I was sitting there, and my model liked it, and Hardy was as negative as could be and as red as could be in every territory of it, and Novak was a top 40 golfer in every iteration of my sheet, and unfortunately, that number moved to about 140. So whoever hit that did a great job of moving that number. That was unfortunately had nothing to do with me, but that was sharp movement in my opinion. Like Novak is very consistently too cheap every single tournament.
Oh, baby. You know, I was all about him. He was the one reason I never had a 6 for 6 last week in a 5 for 6 that cashed. You know, like I would have gone nuts if I had Andrew Novak in that lineup. So it's redemption season for him. As we get out of the 6Ks, I'll just mention Jorge Campillo's name as we get out of here. In the 5, Spencer, Chandler Phillips, Ryan Moore, Joel Damon, Aaron Badley, Kelly Craft, Hayden Buckley, Chad Ramey. These 5K guys are a lot of the guys that I liked last week. Not Hayden Buckley, but I like Hayden Buckley after last week. And Aaron Badley, definitely somebody that I'm in the mood to play at a short 7,000. 7,000-yard golf course, so par 70 venue. Who in the fives are catching your eye?
I'll mention any of the golfers that were inside the top 60 for me. And you can look through my model to get exactly where they landed. I won't give every single answer here, but this would be either from an overall rank or from upside. Max Grazerman, Chandler Phillips broke my model this week. I bet Chandler Phillips at 225 to 1. Like the price there. Sammy Valimaki, that's more of an upside answer versus the safety numbers that you're going to get from him, boom or bust. Barely made the top 60. I mean, we're talking as close of a margin as possible.
Yeah.
Robbie Shelton graded extremely well for me. Aaron Baddeley graded extremely well for me. Chad Ramey had some of the upside returns that I was looking for. And that would be it. Those are all the golfers there that cracked that little threshold return that I was looking for.
Yeah. You are one of the few, well, not one of the few people, but typically you have fewer $5,000 golfers that you roster. You tend to stay clear of this range.
Well, I tend to either stay clear of it or I am one of those people that I don't like. We always talk about diversifying portfolios in other ways. And I think diversifying your portfolio is a smart thing in a lot of aspects. I'm not looking to just pepper the board down in like the $5,000 section. I'm trying to find the 5 to 8 players that my model really likes. And when I do find myself in that situation, those are the names that I want to consistently and aggressively be backing. So it's not so much that I don't necessarily go down into the section, but it's when I do, I'm playing them much higher than public consensus, I guess would be the best answer to give.
Trying to really optimize your edge, so to speak. Spencer, between Andrew Novak and Justin Lower, our guy MP, asking, which one do you like more or do you trust more? I will say I trust Novak more than Lower.
Lauer killed me last week. I had so much exposure to him, and that went very south. I'm going to go with him again. Okay. These are still two golfers that my model likes, but this could be an intriguing bounce back spot for Lauer, in my opinion. Inside of the top 30 of my model, if you throw away last week's result, he would climb into the top 16 for me again. So, we're talking about a golfer that one result seems to be hurting him a little bit, but even still, he's still grading as a top 25 golfer. Okay.
We won't show MP's other comments in the chat yet. They are hilarious though. Very R-rated and funny, but he's not happy about either of these golfers. So Spencer, do we want to do a dollar bet between I'll take Andrew Novak, you take Justin Lauer?
I mean, as boring as this is for the show, I legitimately think it's like a 52 to 48% edge. I don't have a strong opinion one way or another on it.
So that's why I was interested, because I've got Novak 23rd and I've got Lauer 46th. So I've got a decent gap between the two of them.
I'm going to bypass for whatever that's worth.
That's on fine. This, but that's fine.
I think they're both good plays.
Yeah.
I'll just leave it at that. Like, these are, to me, two of the better values to consider when you move down the board.
Absolutely. I think we kind of splitting hairs between two optional plays, like that's where we're going to be going for.
Even when you talk about Lauer and your rank that you have for him, and it's a lot lower than what I would have for him, and it's a lot lower than what you have for Novak. It's still a nice return for what we're talking about price-wise. Like, you're going to have value in that. It doesn't mean that you necessarily have to go down that direction, but at least mathematically, you're going to he's a great, there's a lot of his profile that will look good.
Yeah, exactly. All right. I do have to mention this as we get out of here, Spencer. I was at the Iowa Hawkeye game. The Hawkeye baseball team was at the iCub Stadium. That's when I biked down there with my father-in-law last weekend and crashed my bike on the way back after rolling my ankle the Friday night before that. So I gutted it up, rolled my ankle, still got on the bike, came back, crashed my bike, and my leg's still jacked up. But I saw Iowa Hawkeye wrestling legend Dan Gable at the game, and Spencer, I tweeted it out, and Mike Clive over here on the chat said, you should go and challenge him to a grappling match. And dude, Dan Gable in his 50s or 60s, whatever he is, I think he's probably in his 60s. Spencer was just built like a brick shit house. Like it was just still like so swole. And then his grandson goes and hits a home run in the iCup Stadium for the Hawkeyes. Like as just this incredible situation. He gets up, we're all clapping, and just Dan Gable was just my father-in-law was very excited about in his 70s. So yeah, it was just a fun little moment. Mike's also from Iowa, so we had a
Byron,
nice...
what the fuck is going on your show? You're like challenging Gable to a wrestling match. You're gonna beat me in a 40-yard dash of some kind.
This is Mike. Mike's he causes trouble for me, man. Whenever he's in the chat, there's always nonsense. But trying to get me to wrestle Dad. I think Mike's trying to make me embarrass myself against all these other people, because I would definitely lose a grappling match against Dan Gable, and I'd definitely lose a 40-yard dash against you.
Do you want to on this show challenge Caitlin Clark to a 3-point shooting contest? Like, do you just want to run the entire gambit here?
Let's go. I'll take all the Iowa greats one at a time. I'll also run routes better than George Kittle. So I don't know. But yeah, I used to be an athlete back in the day. It's not gone according to plan since coming to Iowa. But hey, America's been good to me in other areas, not so much the West. But I've had a good time, yeah. So Spencer, thank you so much. I know we've kind of had a good time chatting about the RBC Canadian Open this week. Who's your outrights? I've got Sahith Theegala and Nick Taylor at 22 and 70. I think that's going to be it for me. I have no idea where else to go on this betting board, Spence.
I think that's the general viewpoint of probably the optimal way to build it. Like, it's kind of what I talked about. It's a really strong top of the board, in my opinion, where I'm not looking to get a ton of exposure. I'm going to take a few shots and call it a day. I also took the Theegala at 22-1. I took Tom Kim at 45-1. I think that's playable down into the low 30s.
Yeah.
I took Chandler Phillips at 225-1. That's essentially a half of a unit. I'll look to add on once the tournament starts. I can't imagine unless we get a massive drift on a Sam Burns or something.
Yes. MP making some really good observations in here. I think I am leaning in towards live betting. See what this course is doing. See how it's playing. Like just get in a little bit and then kind of jump in after round one, once you can maybe potentially get a weather edge or something happening. I don't know.
Yeah. And it's like, I think we both are in spots where we each trust our models. So we're going to be able to deviate from what has transpired on day 1 or 2. It doesn't mean you can find an edge necessarily, but there are opportunities that sometimes jump into the mix where if you're just patient, you can find an edge. And that's really the one thing that I always try to talk about, whether it's an outright or a matchup or whatever it is, it's value at the end of the day. Like, you have to make sure that you're getting value on your bets, because if you're blindly throwing darts at a board, you're not going to win money long-term. You might get lucky for an event or two, but that's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to take as sophisticated of a gamble as we can. And at the end of the day, it's a gamble. There's a human element and human error that comes into the mix. We're not necessarily watching what somebody's done a night before they enter the course the next day. I don't know what somebody actually thinks about their game. Statistically, it might look fine. And if you ask the player how they played, they could tell you the exact opposite, and they didn't know how to hit a ball that day. So those are all the human elements that come into the mix, but we're both very data-driven people, and we're always going to try to find the best edge that we can. And whether that's in a matchup market, a placement market, which, by the way, that placement market for me this season has just been a downturn every single week. That is the one market that I cannot seem to beat. And I know you've been crushing it. So kudos to you there, because I don't think that that's a very easy market in 2024.
Where I've found the most success, Spencer, is the top 10, top 5 market.
Interesting.
And, that's the weird thing is I've been taking these buckshot approaches at these guys because the profitability of my top 20, top 40 bets, it's a little profitable, but it's not really doing the hard work, the hard grinding yards. It's all these second place outrights that are finishing top 5 for me, really, at the end of the day, so it's kind of exaggerated touch, because of the missed outrights, but at the same time, you got to get your guy to the top 5 to have a shot. So I've been so damn good I've been 8 second place finishes this year. So I've been crushing it.
There's also less exposure that you need to take on, or even I know you bet everything for the same amount, but there's also a better ROI return that comes into the mix with it. If you can find your edges there, which you seem to be doing, like,
Yeah.
I'm getting stuck in the top 40 market, which I've talked about. Like Nick and I have had this conversation over and over again. And I know like that's Nick's bread and butter market himself. And you find like one or two top 40s that actually have an edge. And even when it has an edge, it unfortunately plays one time and you don't get to realize the true equity that the bet has for that reason. And, it's real easy to come on a show afterwards and say that was the proper bet. And you'll never actually know because that tournament's not going to be played 1,000 times to where we can be proven correct with it.
Exactly.
And, sometimes math is wrong, but that's kind of what we're trying to do. Like make the math as proper as can be. And I think that's one of the things that you and I do very well. If I do give ourselves a little like kudos here for what we do, I think we're very cautious in our approach to where neither one of us likes to massively alter a number because you never want to be in a spot where you think you have such a large edge and you don't in those positions. Like we utilize and take advantage of our edges that we have, but we do it in a very compact and fine-tuned sort of way. Like your bet last week with Scotty is as aggressive as you are ever going to get. Like that is you going balls to the wall and throwing everything out there on that wager. But like that's as extreme as it's ever going to get. And even still, it's a bet that won. And you didn't have that much exposure on it at the end of the day.
And the thing is, Spencer, I can place that bet. I can lose it twice more because of what Scotty's done in that market for me so far.
Yeah, and if you have an edge, then that's all that matters.
That's the thing. It's the fact that that's the beauty of betting long term is knowing, okay, at minus 280 for a top 10 finish, it's scary. But if you do it every single week, you can lose 1 in every 10, which is what Scotty's doing right now. Like it's profitable, man. So I'm really been trying to tell people that you can bet negative odd bets. If there's in golf, you can do it if you have the right strategy.
You have to be careful.
You have to be careful.
But if you have the right strategy, I don't care what a price is at the end of the day. If it has value and there's enough of an edge on it, that's really, as I keep saying, the name of the game there. Yeah. It's very equivalent to the example that I've mentioned on the show numerous times when Mayweather took on McGregor. That price should have been 10 times where it ended up closing there. And that was one of those bets as a gambler that is what you dream about.
Yes.
Like those are the ones where you go massively over what you're comfortable in those spots because your edge is just so large. And it all comes down to how large your edge is. And it's taking advantage of those situations by increasing your bets in those spots. But you never want to have too much of your bankroll on the line on the flip side of that. And that's why proper bankroll management will always be key, because if you're investing too much of your exposure, you're going to go broke. I can promise you that. It's just going to happen.
You need to have enough in your pocket to survive the downturns so that you can profit on the ups. And if you don't have $100 in your pocket, that's okay, because RotoBaller is giving you $100 off your RotoBaller PGA Platinum subscription this week, because Breaking 100 is having its 100th episode. That's my show that I'll be doing tomorrow night at 8 Eastern, and it's the 100th episode. So we're going to get you guys $100 off RotoBaller Platinum. So for the PGA side, so it's $199 for the full year's worth of premium that you get me, Spencer, Joe Nicely, Joe Idoni, all of that stuff, the optimizer, the Discord, everything for $199. This week, use code PGA100. You're going to get yourself $100 off there. Great deal. Celebrating a great podcast, if I do say so myself, Spencer. So that's me. Catch me at The Model Maniac on X. Spencer, get us out of here.
You can find me on Twitter at TOffSports. As Byron talked about, we have so much content that you can consume over at RotoBaller. And one of the things that gets lost in the shuffle, which I'm very glad that you brought it up, we have an optimizer there, which none of us ever talk about. We have so many behind the scene tools that you can go in and, you get Byron's model, you get my model, but you also get a lot of that stuff that's thrown into the mix in that optimizer there. There's a lot of interesting content that we never actually discuss.
Yes, there's like the research tool. Like we've got our own little models, but if you don't like what we're providing, which we do provide to you as that premium platform, you can use the research tool. Like we've got so much fun stuff, and the Discord it's like we've said, it's growing. It's growing. Now it's starting to really like take that next step. We're really having a fun time in the Discord. So
that's powered by DFS Army, correct?
Yes, the research station.
Yes.
Yeah, and the optimizer.
Yeah, they do a great job with that. So there's so many different outlets to look there. And just to answer Stewie's question, I'll very quickly circle back to it and we'll get out of there. I just talked about that. I thought Meisner probably, if you're looking at an outright number when he opened up, was probably the best value on the board. You kind of see that with that number moving very quickly. I tend to think that though that sharp movement that occurred inside of the top 25 on my model, I'm curious to see where ownership lands for DFS just because he's going to be extremely popular, in my opinion. If it can be in a range that's palatable, he's a very nice fit for this course.
Yeah. Or maybe a cash game play if you're looking for a guy down there. Awesome stuff. Thanks for tuning in, Stewie. Good to see you in the chat there. Everybody in the chat, thank you so much for your guys' love, your engagement with us. Please hit that like button on the way out. Hit the subscribe button too while you're at it. We really, really appreciate you guys. Let's have an awesome RBC Canadian Open week. This is Byron Lindeque. That is Spencer Aguiar. Let's have ourselves an amazing week.